Resolving team conflict without breaking the culture. Welcome to Resolving Team Conflict Without Breaking the Culture. In this session, we'll explore how teams can face conflict head-on without damaging the shared values, trust, and cohesion that define a high-performing culture. Rather than viewing conflict as a problem, we'll reframe it as a signal, an opportunity to build stronger alignment, accountability, and innovation. Every team, especially in fast-paced technical environments like engineering or R&D, will encounter friction. What matters is how teams respond. This guide equips you with practical tools to manage disagreement constructively, keeping collaboration strong and psychological safety intact. You'll learn why conflict is often a sign of engagement, how culture and conflict influence each other, and how leaders and team members can transform tension into productive dialogue. Ultimately, the goal isn't to eliminate conflict, it's to handle it skillfully, in ways that make teams more resilient, creative, and united. Today's agenda. Here's what we'll cover today. First, we'll develop a deeper understanding of team conflict, its roots, its types, and the effects it has on team dynamics. We'll differentiate between task, process, relationship, and values conflicts, and discuss how they can either strengthen or damage collaboration. Next, we'll explore the connection between conflict and team culture, how your conflict response reveals and shapes core values. Then, we'll examine the principles for navigating conflict constructively, including specific behaviors that preserve respect and trust. You'll also learn the clear resolution framework, a practical, step-by-step approach for working through difficult conversations. We'll highlight the critical role leaders play in modeling healthy conflict behaviors. From there, we'll move into techniques to repair team culture when it's been damaged. Finally, we'll close with strategies to build conflict-resilient teams that don't fear tension, but use it to grow. Let's dive in and turn conflict into a tool for continuous improvement. Learning objectives. By the end of this course, you'll be able to recognize how conflict impacts team culture and performance. You'll learn to distinguish between productive conflict, which fuels innovation and clarity, and harmful conflict, which erodes trust and collaboration. You'll be introduced to practical conflict resolution techniques that can be applied in real-world scenarios, from cross-functional disagreements to personality clashes. We'll also explore how to repair culture after a conflict, because even well-functioning teams will sometimes experience breakdowns. When that happens, knowing how to rebuild trust and reconnect to shared values is critical. Another key skill you'll develop is transforming tension into opportunity, using conflict as a springboard for creativity, growth, and resilience. Why does this matter? Because how a team handles conflict affects engagement, innovation, and retention. Conflict isn't just about resolution, it's about shaping the kind of team environment people want to stay in and contribute their best work to. Why conflict isn't the enemy. Contrary to common assumptions, conflict isn't necessarily bad. In fact, it's often a sign of engagement. When team members care about the outcome, they bring passion and perspective to the table, which naturally leads to disagreement. Ironically, the absence of conflict may signal something worse: avoidance, fear, groupthink, or apathy. Avoiding hard conversations or suppressing frustration only delays deeper issues. Teams that never challenge ideas may be masking disengagement or fear of repercussions. Healthy conflict, rooted in respect and aligned toward shared goals, is actually a catalyst for innovation, continuous improvement, and accountability. For example, when a product team debates over which features to prioritize, they're not being difficult. They're showing care and investment in quality outcomes. The objective isn't to prevent conflict altogether, but to manage it skillfully. Conflict should be viewed as a vehicle for progress, not a breakdown in teamwork. When handled well, it leads to better decisions and stronger teams. What hidden conflict looks like. Not all conflict is visible. In fact, suppressed or hidden conflict can be more damaging than open disagreement. Silence doesn't always mean harmony. It often means people don't feel safe to speak up. Hidden conflict shows up in subtle but powerful ways. Meetings where no one disagrees or challenges ideas, sudden silence when certain people enter the room, or low participation in team discussions. It might also appear as passive resistance to decisions, or a pattern of important conversations happening through email instead of face-to-face. A common example is a marketing team that always agrees with leadership during meetings, but then stalls implementation due to unspoken frustrations. This dynamic highlights a lack of psychological safety and transparency. Leaders must be proactive in detecting these signals. Conflict isn't just loud arguments, it can also be quiet withdrawal. Cultivating a culture of open, respectful disagreement prevents silent friction from corroding trust and productivity. Risks of unresolved or toxic conflict. When conflict is ignored or mishandled, it can escalate into dysfunction. Unresolved conflict disrupts communication and teamwork, breeding passive-aggressive behavior, blame, and mistrust. Over time, psychological safety declines, collaboration breaks down, and productivity drops. In some cases, the damage can lead to disengagement and high turnover. These issues don't arise overnight. They follow a predictable escalation cycle. It begins with an initial disagreement. If the tension goes unaddressed, communication starts to break down. People stop talking directly and start forming polarized subgroups. Eventually, cultural damage sets in, leading to talent loss and diminished performance. Left unchecked, conflict isn't just a team problem, it becomes an organizational risk. That's why early intervention is essential. Leaders and teammates alike must spot the signs early and respond with intention. Preventing the domino effect of toxic conflict starts with awareness, empathy, and a shared commitment to resolution and accountability. The connection between conflict and team culture. Conflict doesn't just test your team culture, it reveals it. In moments of tension, what people say and how they respond speaks volumes about your organization's values. Whether conflict is handled with care or allowed to fester shows what behaviors are truly acceptable. Are all voices heard in discussions or only the loudest? Can team members challenge ideas without fear? Does dissent lead to growth or punishment? These are critical questions that shape trust, inclusion, and innovation. A healthy team culture creates psychological safety, honors diverse viewpoints, and anchors disagreements in shared goals. In contrast, a toxic response to conflict signals to everyone that it's unsafe to speak honestly. How you handle difficult moments defines the long-term health of your culture. By treating conflict not as a disruption, but as a moment to uphold your values, you reinforce trust and cohesion. Culture is built and rebuilt every time you respond to conflict. Types of team conflict. To address conflict effectively, it's important to understand its type. Task conflict arises when there's disagreement about what work should be done or which goals to prioritize, such as whether to focus on feature A or feature B. Process conflict, on the other hand, involves disagreements about how to do the work. For example, if someone bypasses a review process. Relationship conflict involves interpersonal tension, trust issues, or miscommunication, like when someone feels dismissed in meetings. Each type of conflict requires a different approach. Task and process conflicts can be productive when handled respectfully, often leading to better strategies and alignment. But relationship and values conflicts are more emotionally charged and require deeper self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and cultural sensitivity to resolve. Identifying the nature of the conflict helps teams choose the right resolution method and avoid escalating tensions unnecessarily. Naming the conflict correctly is the first step toward resolving it constructively. Productive versus harmful conflict. Not all conflict is harmful. Some can actually improve outcomes. Productive conflict focuses on issues, maintains respect, and remains solution-oriented. For example, task conflict, disagreements about what to prioritize, can lead to innovation when everyone stays focused on results. Similarly, moderate process conflict can spark efficiency gains as teams debate how to improve workflows. However, harmful conflict tends to be personal, emotionally charged, or rooted in power imbalances. Relationship conflict, where interpersonal friction dominates, rarely produces value. Values conflict, clashes over ethics or beliefs, can fracture teams if not navigated carefully. Conflict should be escalated when it becomes emotional or repetitive, when power dynamics stall progress, or when team well-being suffers. Key traits of productive conflict include a respectful tone, openness to feedback, and focus on the issue. Harmful conflict, in contrast, involves blame, dismissiveness, and defensive behaviors. The aim isn't zero conflict, it's to guide it toward learning, improvement, and shared understanding. Principles for constructive team conflict. Constructive conflict requires intentional practices that preserve trust and culture. First, separate intent from impact. Always assume positive intent, but speak honestly about how actions are perceived. Say, "I know that wasn't your intention, but here's how it landed." Second, address issues early. Don't wait for tensions to escalate. Intervene while the issue is still manageable. Third, focus on the issue, not the person. Stick to facts and be specific, avoiding personal attacks. Fourth, use I statements. This reduces defensiveness by focusing on your experience, like saying, "I feel overwhelmed when priorities shift without notice." Fifth, invite multiple perspectives. Make space for all voices before deciding. Often, conflict stems from only hearing part of the story. And sixth, bring in a neutral facilitator for high-stakes or emotionally charged situations. A manager, coach, or HR partner can ensure a safe, balanced conversation. These principles don't eliminate conflict. They transform it into a culture-strengthening force. Principles in action, examples. Putting conflict principles into action means changing how we communicate during tense moments. Let's walk through examples that show the difference between poor and best practices. For Principle 1, separating intent from impact. Instead of accusing someone of disrespect, like saying, "You clearly don't respect my time," try, "I know you probably didn't intend this, but when you arrived late, it made me feel like my time wasn't valued." Principle 2, addressing issues early means not waiting until a formal review. If you notice tension in a recent meeting, say, "Could we take 15 minutes to talk through it now?" Principle 3, focusing on the issue, not the person, shifts from blame, like "you're disorganized," to specifics. "The last 3 handoffs were missing documents. How can we improve that?" Principle 4, using I statements, softens criticism and centers experience. "I feel overwhelmed when priorities shift without notice." Words matter. How you speak shapes how others respond, and whether conflict moves toward resolution or resentment. The clear conflict resolution method. The CLEAR method is a structured 5-step process that helps you work through conflict constructively while preserving trust. The first step is clarify. Define the issue objectively using facts, not assumptions. Say what happened, not what you think someone meant. Second, listen actively. Let each person speak without interruptions. Focus on understanding, not rebutting. Third, empathize. Acknowledge the other person's feelings, even if you don't agree with their interpretation. It's about validating experience, not agreeing with every detail. Fourth, agree on a way forward. Collaborate to co-create a resolution or compromise. Involve both parties in shaping the outcome. And finally, review and reflect. Check in afterward to make sure the conflict is fully resolved and not lingering below the surface. This step builds trust and accountability. The CLEAR method helps you stay grounded, respectful, and forward-looking, even in high-stakes moments. It transforms conflict from a reactive exchange into a productive and healing process. Role of leaders in modeling healthy conflict. Leaders set the tone for how teams navigate conflict. When leaders demonstrate that disagreement is safe and valuable, teams follow their lead. Leaders must model healthy conflict by creating space for dissent and debate, encouraging open dialogue rather than forcing alignment. When tension arises, leaders should acknowledge their role, reinforcing transparency and ownership. Even under pressure, they must remain calm and present, showing that emotional moments are not threats, but opportunities. A leader who coaches others through conflict, not just fixes it, builds team maturity and resilience. For example, instead of stepping in to resolve disputes immediately, a strong leader might ask guiding questions, helping the team surface root issues and create their own solutions. This builds capacity, not dependence. Ultimately, leaders have a multiplier effect. When they treat conflict as a growth opportunity, they model accountability, emotional intelligence, and cultural alignment, strengthening not just outcomes, but team cohesion and trust. Repairing culture after conflict. Even the most well-intentioned teams experience moments when conflict harms trust or culture. The key isn't to avoid all damage, it's to commit to repair. Step 1 is to name the rupture honestly. Acknowledge what happened and its impact without minimizing it. Don't sweep tension under the rug. Step 2. Apologize and take responsibility. Focus on your role in the conflict instead of blaming others. Owning your part shows maturity and builds credibility. Step 3 is to reaffirm shared values. Remind each other why the team exists and what unites you beyond this disagreement. Step 4. Facilitate healing conversations. Create space for every voice to be heard and for emotions to be aired constructively. And finally, Step 5. Rebuild trust through action. Follow through on commitments. Be transparent, check in often, and celebrate small wins. Healing doesn't happen passively. It takes intention and effort. But when done well, conflict becomes a turning point for stronger culture. Embedding conflict resilience into team culture. To truly master conflict, teams must embed conflict resilience into their daily operations. That means making constructive conflict part of your team's identity. Include it in your norms, your values, even your onboarding. Train your team in the skills that support conflict navigation, like emotional intelligence, active listening, and feedback delivery. Don't wait for tension to build. Conduct regular health check-ins to catch issues early. After a conflict, hold a retrospective. Ask, what did we learn from this disagreement? Celebrate when differences lead to better outcomes. These are victories for team culture. Measure psychological safety frequently and make space for people to express disagreement without fear. Also, recognize and highlight team members who serve as role models for healthy conflict. Their behavior sets the standard. Conflict resilience isn't reactive. It's proactive, learned, and celebrated. The strongest teams aren't free of tension. They're the ones who've built the muscle to grow through it. Conclusion: conflict as a path to growth. Conflict isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace with care and clarity. The strongest teams don't avoid tension. They transform it into growth. Conflict reveals the strength of your values and the depth of your relationships. Handled well, it leads to clearer expectations, more authentic collaboration, and deeper trust. The goal isn't to eliminate conflict, it's to gain the skills and cultural maturity to handle it skillfully. Remember, conflict, when faced with courage and empathy, becomes a catalyst for learning and innovation. Whether you're leading a project team, working cross-functionally, or managing direct reports, your approach to conflict will define your impact. So your final challenge is this: don't shy away from disagreement. Step into it. Use tools like the CLEAR method, focus on shared values, and lean into the conversations that matter most. Because when done right, conflict isn't a breakdown. It's your team's greatest opportunity to grow stronger together.